In mid-September of 2018, a baffling event unfolded in Belford, a tiny town in New South Wales with roughly 1,500 residents located about 25 miles north of Sydney. This town was home to the Carter family, Richard, aged 48, his wife, Samantha, 50, and their three adult children, Zoe, 32, Ethan, 28, and Lily, 26. The Carters were renowned for their integrity and success. Richard and Samantha managed a thriving blueberry orchard in addition to a local landscaping business. Their residence, nestled on the orchard grounds, not only served as their home but also accommodated two of their children, who all worked closely on the family business every day. Then, on the 14th of September 2018, something inexplicable occurred. In a state of pure terror, the entire family abandoned their home in a complete rush, leaving behind every personal belonging, phones, credit cards, IDs, and all other essentials. It was as if they had been forced to flee the moment they heard an alarm bell in their minds. The next day, on the 15th, the local police were alerted after a panicked neighbor reported that Richard and Samantha appeared to have vanished without a trace. When authorities arrived at the Carter property, the scene was perplexing. The house, usually so warm and inviting, looked as if someone had desperately scoured every room for hidden clues. Yet, aside from a few signs of hurried activity, nothing seemed disturbed, except for one unsettling detail: every vehicle parked outside had its keys still in the ignition, ready to be driven off at a moment's notice, with one notable exception, the old pickup truck, which had mysteriously vanished. Both front doors of the house were left wide open, and there were no signs of a struggle. Early investigations led the officers to believe that the family had fled in a state of overwhelming panic, though the true cause of their sudden departure remained shrouded in mystery. Even more puzzling, among all the abandoned items, one of the children's personal mementos was nowhere to be found. In the weeks preceding their disappearance, subtle changes had begun to erode the calm of life on the orchard. Richard had grown increasingly anxious and withdrawn, his once confident demeanor replaced by a palpable sense of dread. Late at night, when the stars were hidden by overcast skies, he would pace the creaking floors of the farmhouse, murmuring about unseen threats and inexplicable dangers. At first, Samantha dismissed these episodes as the strain of managing two demanding businesses, but gradually, her skepticism turned into shared fear. The couple's private conversations grew darker, and soon both parents found themselves haunted by the thought that someone, or something, was watching them. Zoe, Ethan, and Lily noticed the change immediately. Initially, they chalked it up to the pressures of expanding the business and juggling family responsibilities, but as their parents' behavior grew more erratic, unease seeped into every corner of the household. The children attempted to reassure their parents, urging them to seek help or at least talk through their worries. Yet, every plea was met with a stubborn resolve that the threat was imminent and unavoidable. The atmosphere at the orchard became charged with tension, a slow-burning anxiety that no one could fully explain. On the crisp morning of the 14th, under a leaden sky, Richard declared with a fervor that left no room for debate: the family was in immediate danger and had to leave without delay. Although the very idea of abandoning the home and the orchard was heart-wrenching, the intensity of Richard's conviction made it impossible for Zoe, Ethan, and Lily to question him. The original plan was to head for the local airport and board a flight overseas, a plan that seemed both dramatic and impractical. Moments before departure, however, Richard abruptly changed his mind. He argued that if they used their passports, any malevolent force tracking them could easily follow, so they must instead rely on the anonymity of the open road. In a scene of pure hysteria, the Carters piled into Lily's battered SUV. In a final, desperate measure to avoid detection, Richard clutched his mobile phone, only to hurl it out of the window about 20 miles into the journey. His fear was that any modern communication device might betray their location to whoever was pursuing them. Meanwhile, Ethan, who maintained a silent, watchful distance from the escalating panic, seemed to doubt the practicality of their flight yet remained ensnared in the family's collective terror. The family's escape led them far from Belford, winding through back roads and remote landscapes. They eventually covered nearly 400 miles, arriving in the small town of Riverton in the heart of New South Wales. The long, unbroken drive was punctuated by moments of strained silence and furtive glances exchanged among the family members. In Riverton, overwhelmed by the cumulative stress, Ethan could no longer endure the chaos. With a heavy heart, he stepped out of the SUV in the middle of the town, leaving the vehicle behind. His departure was a silent protest against the irrationality that had overtaken his family, yet it left him stranded without money, a phone, or any clear plan. The remaining family members forged onward, their next destination the ancient and enigmatic Marlin Caverns, located deep in the Blue Ridge region of New South Wales. These caverns were more than just a geological wonder, they were steeped in local indigenous lore. According to native legends, the Marlin Caverns were not only a refuge in times of dire need but also a place where the spirits spoke. Elders recounted that those in danger might experience vivid dreams or receive sudden, inexplicable urges to seek shelter within the cavern's labyrinthine depths. Glowing orbs were sometimes seen drifting in the dark, believed to be trickster spirits intent on luring the unwary deeper into the maze. In a twist of eerie fate, it appeared that the Carters had chosen these very caverns as their sanctuary. After arriving at the shadowy entrance of the Marlin Caverns, the palpable weight of fear and uncertainty grew too much for Zoe and Lily. The oppressive atmosphere and the dissonance between their parents' unwavering belief in an unseen menace and their own rational doubts pushed the sisters to act. In a sudden, disjointed decision, they abandoned the group. They located a parked sedan in a nearby clearing, a vehicle that, by some twist of fortune, had a spare key left inside, and sped off toward the town of Glenvale. There, shaken and desperate, they immediately contacted local authorities to report the disappearance of their parents. Their voices trembled as they recounted the surreal sequence of events, though even their detailed account could not fully convey the strangeness of their ordeal. Meanwhile, Samantha and Richard continued their erratic journey through the wilderness. For reasons that remain enigmatic, Samantha later split from Richard, opting to use public transportation in a bid to head north, perhaps in an effort to return to the safety of the cavern's embrace. Her path eventually led her to Eastwood, a modest town where, bereft of a phone or money, she attempted to check into a rundown motel. Her disoriented wanderings through Eastwood's dimly lit streets, marked by bouts of confusion and anxiety, soon drew the attention of passers-by. In no time, she was escorted to the local hospital, where she received urgent care for severe exhaustion and psychological distress. At the Marlin Caverns, the unsettling silence that followed Zoe and Lily's departure was quickly replaced by mounting concern. Lily, separated from Zoe shortly after their frantic exit, found herself alone in the cavern's vicinity with no means of communication. In a desperate bid to reconnect with her family, she commandeered a car using a stolen debit card and drove the grueling 7-hour journey back to Belford. Upon returning, she discovered that local police were still combing through the once idyllic Carter residence, piecing together a narrative that defied logic. Ethan, stranded without any financial resources or a functioning phone, resorted to a series of train rides that crisscrossed several small towns. His long and arduous journey eventually brought him back home the following morning, where he was met with bewildered questions from both family members and law enforcement. Despite a thorough and painstaking investigation, the authorities could find no evidence of external threats, no substantial financial distress, and no traces of chemical exposure that might explain the rapid descent into paranoia. The situation took a dramatic turn one evening in Eastwood. Eyewitnesses later reported that Richard was seen driving erratically near a local park. After allegedly tailgating another vehicle, he pulled over in a fit of anger and fled on foot into a nearby wooded area. Despite the deployment of search dogs, no scent was detected to trail his escape. It wasn't until nearly a week after the initial disappearance, on the 20th of September, that a passerby discovered a disoriented Richard near a regional airport. Described as being deeply confused and in a near catatonic state, he was quickly taken into custody. At the police station, Richard endured hours of intense questioning and underwent a comprehensive mental health evaluation before being released into the care of his estranged brother, a local law enforcement officer. The case captivated the entire nation, drawing both media frenzy and widespread public concern. In a televised interview that resonated with grief and confusion, Zoe and Ethan expressed their heartfelt thanks to the police and the community. Yet, even as they recounted their ordeal, the narrative remained shrouded in ambiguity. Every explanation, whether forensic, financial, or psychological, seemed to hit a dead end. As the investigation progressed, experts began to consider a rare psychological phenomenon, shared psychotic disorder, sometimes known as folie à deux or shared madness. This disorder occurs when one individual's delusional belief system spreads to close associates, particularly within tightly knit groups. In the case of the Carters, Richard's persistent belief that an unseen enemy was closing in appeared to have acted as the catalyst. His unyielding terror was so infectious that it eventually seeped into Samantha's consciousness, and, through the bonds of family trust, touched Zoe, Ethan, and Lily as well. Psychiatrists involved in the case noted that the family's isolation, combined with the immense pressures of managing multiple business responsibilities, had likely created a fertile environment for such a delusional contagion. While Ethan managed to break free from the shared delusion, likely due to a more skeptical and independent nature, Zoe and Lily found themselves caught in a spiraling vortex of paranoia. Their shared fear, magnified by the strong familial bonds and the trust they placed in their parents, ultimately compelled them to take drastic actions. By March of 2019, after extensive psychological counseling and community outreach, the Carters began the painstaking process of returning to normalcy. The Blueberry Orchard, once the symbol of their legacy and hard work, resumed operations under a heavy cloud of trauma and uncertainty. Family members, though physically reunited, faced the arduous task of reconciling their memories with the inexplicable terror of that fateful September. While police reports and forensic analyses had ruled out any external threats or foul play, the psychological scars remained deeply etched in the minds of all involved. In the months following the incident, community support groups and mental health professionals collaborated to offer counseling and crisis intervention not only to the Carter family but also to others affected by the lingering effects of such psychological phenomena. Local schools invited experts to speak about mental health and stress management, while town hall meetings often revisited the strange events as a case study in how isolation and overwhelming pressure can distort even the most rational minds. For many in Belford, the Carter saga remains a poignant lesson in the vulnerabilities inherent in tight-knit communities. It highlights the importance of open dialogue about mental health, the need for early intervention when signs of psychological distress arise, and the vital role that community support plays in recovering from shared traumas. Despite the passage of time, the family's story continues to serve as both a mystery and a mirror, reflecting the complex interplay between environment, mental health, and the human capacity for fear. In retrospect, the case of the Carter family is not merely a tale of a sudden disappearance but a profound exploration of how deeply psychological pressures can alter lives. The bizarre events of that September have since become part of Belford's lore, a cautionary tale of shared madness and the unexpected power of fear.